U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken worked to shore up Allied support for Ukraine ahead of President-elect Donald Trump's return to the White House in January as he attended 2 days of talks with NATO foreign ministers in Brussels. Outgoing President Joe Biden will not be in power when NATO leaders gather for their next summit in June, but he has stepped up the delivery of weapons and other material to Ukraine over the past several months and has also eased restrictions on how Kiev can use them. Biden's goal is to put Ukraine in the best position possible to negotiate a settlement and has come as Moscow has made significant advances in the conflict and North Korean troops have moved to assist Russian forces. By contrast, Trump has been skeptical of the U.S. assistance and has suggested that his administration will sharply curtail or end it. "I think what we're working to do in the time that we have left is to give Ukraine, to give our own country, to give all the allies and partners that support Ukraine the strongest possible hand to use next year and beyond," Blinken told reporters in Brussels on Wednesday as he attended the talks with fellow NATO ministers. "If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight: the money, the munitions, the mobilized forces. If it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then, again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength," he added. Blinken also spoke about importance of investing in NATO, and also commented on the situation in Syria. "We have enduring security interests in Syria, particularly the interest in making sure that ISIS doesn't resurrect and doesn't come back," he said. "It's profoundly onerous to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so our own engagement and presence remains important," he added.
I think what we're working to do in the time that we have left is to give Ukraine, to give our own country, to give all the allies and partners that support Ukraine the strongest possible hand to use next year and beyond. If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight: the money, the munitions, the mobilized forces. If it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then, again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength. And from my perspective, I think what I'm trying to do, not just with Ukraine, but across the board, is to give the incoming administration the strongest hand to play in all of these areas, and to pass the baton in a way that they can hit the ground running, because the world doesn't stop just because we have a political transition underway in the United States.
Secretary Blinken, President Zelenski in the last few days.
What's so unique about NATO is the compact that each of its members make, that an attack on one is an attack on all. What's so powerful about that is it tells any would-be aggressor, if you go after one of us, you're going to have to deal with all of us. That is the most powerful deterrent to war breaking out in the first place. That is the most powerful deterrent against aggression. It's not a surprise that Russia has not attacked directly a NATO member. So when we all talk about this powerful desire to avoid conflicts, to prevent wars, to have peace, the best way to do that is through our ongoing investment in the world's most successful defensive alliance, and that is NATO. We have enduring interests, enduring security interests in Syria, particularly the interest in making sure that ISIS doesn't resurrect and doesn't come back. There was a tremendous success by the Obama administration and then completed by the first Trump administration to end the so-called geographic caliphate that had been established, all of the ground and the almost physical state that had been established. It's profoundly interesting to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so our own engagement and presence remains important. Partners who are working to make sure that, again, we don't see a resurrection of an extremist caliphate, a jihadist caliphate. That remains vital.
The Pentagon is watching fast-moving developments in South Korea and Syria, saying there is no change to U.S. force posture on the Korean peninsula, despite intense turmoil between South Korea's president and lawmakers in parliament. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's government lifted the martial law he imposed during a tense night of political drama in which troops surrounded parliament and lawmakers voted to reject military rule. Yoon said early Wednesday that his government withdrew military personnel following a bipartisan parliamentary vote rejecting martial law, and the measure was formally lifted during a cabinet meeting around 4:30 a.m. The United States is in close contact with the ROK government to learn more, and is closely monitoring developments, said Pentagon spokesperson Major General Pat Ryder. Ryder also told reporters that U.S. forces conducted a self-defense strike Tuesday in the vicinity of Mission Support Site Euphrates, a U.S. base in eastern Syria, against 3 truck-mounted multiple rocket launchers, AT-64 tank and mortars. Ryder said the U.S. military responded to a clear and imminent threat to U.S. troops. Ryder said the attack was not connected to the offensive that is ongoing in Aleppo, where Syrian jihadi-led rebels have advanced and taken over the country's capital city. The U.S. has about 900 troops in Syria to conduct missions to counter the Islamic State group. In another matter, Ryder provided details on the latest U.S. military aid package to Ukraine, valued at $725 million. This latest package will provide Ukraine significant additional capabilities to meet its most urgent needs, including air defense capabilities, munitions for rocket systems and artillery and anti-tank weapons, Ryder said. The United States will continue to work with our allies and partners to ensure that Ukraine has the security assistance it needs to defend itself from Russian aggression.
All right, well, good afternoon. Secretary Austin and the Department of Defense continue to monitor the developing situation in the Republic of South Korea. The United States is in close contact with the ROK government to learn more and is closely monitoring developments. As we have any updates to provide, we'll be sure to pass them along as appropriate. Everyone, I have a few things to pass along, and then we'll get right to your questions. First,
any changes to U.S. force posture with the number of troops we have in?
There have been no changes, to my knowledge.
And have you seen any indications North Korea is poised or trying or willing to take advantage of the situation?
Of course, we're closely monitoring the situation, but I'm not aware of any force posture changes. Warren.
Such an honor. Yes. Just a few South Korea questions. Has General Kamara been in touch with his South Korean counterparts, or has there been other?
This morning, U.S. Central Command forces successfully destroyed several weapon systems in the vicinity of military support site Euphrates in Syria that included 3 truck-mounted multiple rocket launchers, a T-64 tank, and mortars that presented a clear and imminent threat to U.S. and coalition forces. The self-defense strike occurred after the mobile multiple rocket launchers fired rockets that landed in the vicinity of MSS Euphrates, and mortars were fired towards U.S. forces. We're still assessing who is operating these weapons, but do know that there are Iranian-backed militia groups in the area that have conducted attacks on MSS Euphrates in the past. There are also Syrian military forces that operate in the area. To be clear, these self-defense actions successfully eliminated imminent threats to U.S. personnel and were not linked to any broader activities in northwest Syria by other groups.
How does martial law impact U.S. troops in South Korea?
Well, as I mentioned, let me underscore that the U.S. mission in Syria remains unchanged as U.S. and coalition forces continue to focus on the enduring defeat of ISIS. However, we remain fully prepared to defend and protect our personnel and assets deployed in the region, to include our forces deployed to Syria.
Yes, Korea and Ukraine. South Korean President.
As you may have seen yesterday, the department announced the 71st PDA package for Ukraine. With an estimated value of $725 million, This latest package will provide Ukraine significant additional capabilities to meet its most urgent needs, including air defense capabilities, munitions for rocket systems and artillery, and anti-tank weapons. The United States will continue to work with our allies and partners to ensure that Ukraine has the security assistance it needs to defend itself from Russian aggression.
President Vladimir declared martial law to prevent the destruction of liberal democracy.
Russian aggression still poses a threat to Ukrainian sovereignty. The Ukrainians have demonstrated and expressed the will to continue to fight. And as Secretary Austin has said many times, Ukraine matters, not only to European security, but to U.S. and international security. So we will continue to consult with our Ukrainian partners. We'll continue to consult with our allies and partners around the world. And as you know, in terms of what Ukraine needs to defend itself, and so we will continue to support them in their fight.
I think there